Contest prep with zero cardio. What's up, everyone? I'm John Joe at J3U University. We elevate physique education. Today, I'm going to let you on the secret of how you're going to do a contest prep. You're not going to touch a single cardio machine. Is that the reality? Or am I just selling you false hope? Unfortunately, cardio for most is going to be the case. And there are preps absolutely out there that many people don't have to do cardio. I am that rare case that has happened, and that has happened over time. And I'll give you some cases of when you might be able to build this into your prep. But again, there's going to be people that will always have cardio in their prep. And so it's the usual. And what is the problem with cardio? And for those that need to do it, we're going to have some strategies here that we're going to go over to where we can at least have it not be as impactful and create detriment to the physique that we want to bring on stage. What is that physique? What is the goal of getting on stage? And it's presenting the physique with condition appropriate for your division, which in most cases, for at least the male divisions where we speak to a lot of, is just as lean as humanly possible. But also the other side of that equation is also being able to display the muscularity that you created in the off season. So we don't want to diet away all of our hard-earned muscle in contest prep. The problem, a lot of people just hate cardio and prep. It's just been kind of demonized, and it's not as fun. We probably got into bodybuilding because you loved resistance training and weight training and didn't enjoy cardio, and that's why you're here on this channel. You're not on some marathon runners channel learning all about long endurance type events. The other problem around for prep is that prep demands a calorie deficit and kind of makes cardio just unnecessary, and with more cardio, it can be a hindrance for muscle retention, performance, and recovery. And that's where the real issue kind of lies, is that cardio is this impeding opposing stimulus for your hypertrophy goal. And so within contest prep, our real thing here for bodybuilding purposes, and where you kind of see steps have evolved in contest prep, is that we realize that a bodybuilding prep, it's just about creating a calorie deficit with the least impairment to your resistance training possible. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a specific type of cardio output that's occurring. We just really want the one that's as least imposing to resistance training, as that's what's going to be taking care of the other side of the equation, maintaining muscle mass. So why does excessive cardio hurt gains? Well, for one, like I mentioned, it's an opposing stimulus. Resistance training has a stimulus for creating hypertrophy, which is specific to certain muscle types, while cardio is more specific to muscular endurance, which is going to be opposing to like type 2 muscle fiber hypertrophy. You're typically going to want to be a smaller individual. Now, there is some research that is out there that the interference effect of these opposing signals could be a little bit overstated, and cardio doesn't hurt gains as much. However, when you put in the fact that you're in a calorie deficit and you're not going to get as much stimulus out of resistance training, it very well might start to become more opposing, especially when cardio volumes are increasing at levels that could increase that signaling to occur. Another issue around this is that increasing systemic fatigue. Centrally, right, we have overall total fatigue load that's occurring, and then locally as well. So if you're doing lots of Stairmaster type cardio and beating up your legs, there's a localized effect that might decrease your training performance on your leg days, but also systemically too. If your total fatigue could be carrying over, lowering performance on your push days, your pull days, arm days, and so forth. And all that means is that you're going to have lower training output. So you're not going to be able to produce the same amount of stimulus on those muscle groups, which means you very well could lose muscle mass across prep, which I always see as training performance is your best proxy for muscle retention on prep. So right away, if you know like training performance is taking the big hit, that's likely when you're going to see that fullness drop off and the muscularity start dropping off on prep. So what do we do about it? How do you program cardio effectively? So one, dieting steps should be your primary fat loss variables that you really work with here. And I do see these being the larger variables that you can really create the deficit with. Now, if you're someone that has cardio that is in place on prep, you should keep that in place in the off season. That way, when you do start, you don't just go from no cardio to implementing cardio on prep when you're in a calorie deficit, and now you're bringing a ton of volume for cardio, and you haven't created any of those adaptations present, which can make cardio much more challenging and particularly more opposing in that signal versus if you already had it to begin with to start. So there should be a baseline of cardio present. Even for myself, I keep cardio in the off season, but doing HIIT cardio for cardiovascular health. I keep that in place in prep as I move in, but as I move through prep, I can start transitioning out, and we'll kind of mention that here in shortly. But your calorie level is going to be where you can create the greatest deficit. And then the thing that's going to be the least impeding is going to be also steps, just walking, daily activity. This is another way to create very easy type of calorie deficit. Once you're in prep, the thing about HIIT, because I mentioned it, right, is I would be prioritizing more low intensity or moderate intensity steady state cardio over HIIT, because HIIT is very central nervous system taxing, even though you can do it in a way that could not create a lot of localized fatigue. Like for myself, I do like 2-3 sets on the spin bike and 2-3 sets on the battle rope. However, again, it's more about the central nervous system fatigue that doesn't really occur as much with low intensity and moderate intensity. So when I move someone into prep, if they've been doing HIIT, I transition them into lower intensity, moderate intensity type cardio. Now, a few kind of guidelines that I like to go by is no session goes longer than 30 minutes. The longer the session, the more opposing signaling you're going to get for that interference effect. Another thing is the modality of cardio. I try to pick a cardio that doesn't have any eccentric component, because you know the eccentric component of cardio or exercise in general creates more muscular damage, which means more fatigue, more detriment to your training performance. So you might want to stick with something like the elliptical, where it's just a pushing motion, or a spin bike would be another example. Things that would be a bad example would be the Stairmaster, where you're picking up your feet and you're slamming them down on the steps. That's the nice thing about it is you burn a lot of calories. The negative about the step mill is that it is quite fatiguing locally. Now, another strategy I'd like to use too in prep to just prevent some of these adaptations from occurring and also from fatigue rising really high is give yourself a D-output day early in prep. A lot of people, we always talk about refeeds, right? Like you're in a calorie deficit, you want to take a day that's out of a calorie deficit, let's just add food in. Well, you can think of the other side of the equation. If you're in a calorie deficit, instead of adding food in, you could just drop your cardio down, and that brings you out of the deficit. A day I find earlier on in prep is when training fatigue is more problematic than actual diet fatigue. And I would save the diet strategies for later on in prep. So always I just program one day where we're not going to do cardio. We're going to keep steps lower. We're not going to have training. Then we can keep calories just at maintenance that day to support recovery. Time cardio around training is going to be important too. So the farther away from training you can put your cardio, the better ideally. So I could do some first in the morning. And then again, your total cardio time for the day is really what matters here. It doesn't have to be all done in one session. I've been really strategic with it because again, it's total calories burned. So I've even done like 10 minutes before I train, another 10 minutes after I train, then I have my other like 20-30 minute segment at another time of the day. That way it's not doing just 20 minutes straight post training. Can break it up because 10 minutes of cardio before you work out, that's not going to impact performance. But again, the same type of calorie burn. Whether you're getting into the fat burning zone or anything, that doesn't even matter, okay? It's just about work and output at this point. And then push steps higher. Again, I brought up steps, and this is where you can kind of get into the prep where you won't need a lot of cardio is staying very active. And this is a mistake that I made in the past when I just sat on the couch all day, or not literally on the couch, but I sat all day. I worked. I was an online coach, right? I would get up to the gym. I'd go train. I would maybe get 3,000 or 4,000 steps a day, which is like walking like 2 miles a day, which is nothing. Now on preps, I push steps up to 15,000, 16,000 steps per day, which is closer to walking like 8 miles. So now throughout the day, I'm just moving and walking. I have a walking pad, which that calorie burn for me can easily burn 100 calories per mile that I walk. So now putting in, say, an extra 6 miles per day, that's another 600 calories burned. That's literally the difference of me needing to do 40 minutes of cardio on the step mill or not. And that's when I used to have those preps where food was at 1,500 calories and I was doing 2 45-minute sessions of cardio per day. And now I don't anymore. I just do my 15, 16,000 steps. I create the deficit with my diet, and that's how I go about doing my prep. It's effective. Now, that's not to say like everyone's out there is going to need to be doing some cardio. They might not have enough food source to be able to lower to create that deficit, or they are more metabolically adaptive. You lower food, nothing really changes, and you have to lower food again, and then it's just kind of struggling along the way. It's totally possible. Like for myself, I'm not as adaptive. And so when I lower food, I can keep moving for several weeks. I know you're probably sitting here listening to me like, shut up, John. We don't care about any of your genetic ability that favors you for bodybuilding, right? But again, it's a spectrum across these variables. It's not like you're one or the other. You see kind of everything in between. So being as strategic as possible with your cardio will definitely help you to prevent you from, really sucking down, losing that tissue in your contest prep, and not being able to display all that hard work that you put in the off season. So use these programming tips to improve your cardio applications in your contest prep. I can't promise you're not going to be doing cardio, but at least you can make the most of it and get the most out of your stage look this year.